All right, guys. Time to get back into it a little bit. Obviously, the election's over. Had a couple of days to rest and relax. Election left me with a good bit of a headache. I don't know about you guys. But this is kind of an interesting video. I want to both acknowledge and reflect on a couple of things. Number one, my prediction, if you had watched the video or if I can sort of recap for you, my prediction was not exactly correct. Not exactly correct. My prediction wasn't correct going into election day. And there's several reasons for that. We can go ahead and reflect and we'll be able to understand why. But my prediction going into election day wasn't correct. However, quite interestingly so, or at least I think interestingly, I wrote an article about a year before the election, more or less, nine or 10 months or so. Basically, my way too early 2024 election thoughts and predictions. This was posted on Medium. I'm not saying to go follow me on Medium or anything, but this is just something I did for fun, and I probably should have stuck a little bit closer to this. Very fascinating to go back and read this because actually, when we go back and analyze this prediction 10 months before the election was actually sort of predictive of exactly sort of the things that were going to happen. And without further ado, let's sort of go through it. It's very, very quick. So to sum up, the front runner for the Republican ticket is a literal fascist, and I'll take credit because I was calling Trump a fascist before anyone else, so thank you, who tried to seize power during his last term. He is a civilly liable rapist, defamer, fraudster, on the hook for $500 million cash, indicted 4 times criminally, twice impeached. I didn't write that here. At the time, being removed from ballots across the country, Maine and Colorado, because of his insurrectionist ways, 14th Amendment, etc. Those were overturned by the Supreme Court, and I'm actually kind of glad that they were, even though obviously we have to live with the reality now. I don't think that was a good rabbit hole to be going down. Democrats are, at least seemingly, planning to go full steam ahead with Joe Biden as their candidate, as they were. A president who got more good things done than any president in my lifetime, but who has no idea how to communicate the fact that the American people, who has no idea how to communicate that fact to the American people, and who also doesn't seem even really to be able to communicate at all anymore, leading to questions about how the 81-year-old will be able to finish out his term, let alone another entire one. Yeah. So this is very, very important, all of this here. One of the things that the Democrats are the absolute worst at is doing positive things and then not letting anybody absolutely know that they've done a positive thing. Uh, so Joe Biden did active legislation like the CHIPS Act, CHIPS and Science Act, Infrastructure Spending, Inflation Reduction Act that are all geared towards investing investing at home, basically bringing back jobs, investing in infrastructure, expanding manufacturing, expanding green technologies and things like that. They do all these things, but they don't tell anybody that they did. If Trump did a fraction of those things, he would have 10,000 ads. He would do a rally. He would go around the country telling everybody how amazing and how great and how fantastic it was. And Biden just doesn't do that, right? He does it. He says, go enjoy it. And, of course, now the next person that goes into office, in this case, Trump, is going to be able to take credit for all that. And that's just phenomenal. So absolutely miserable strategy to do good things and then not tell anybody that you do good things. It's one of the things that Trump does correctly and does well, and that's why he is difficult to get rid of. Um, Even if he does a bad thing, if he does something, just outrageously negative and bad, he'll say it's a good thing and people will believe him, at least his supporters. Um, and then there's the fact that he was just not able to communicate at all anymore. His cognitive decline, very, very evident. And the American people weren't having it. Even Democrats were eager for him to step aside, but of course he did not. Then let's get into the Kamala Harris side of this. Again, this is 8 months or so even before the election. Kamala Harris has been AWOL since about 6 months into the Biden presidency, when she was going to, quote, take care of the border, remember? Due to her likability issues, as well as apparent turmoil within her staff, there was talks about constant turnover in the staff, not a lot of satisfaction there. You could say that that's sort of normal, like DC behavior, but there were rumors that behind the scenes she was quite difficult to work with. AWOL, right? Just completely missing, nowhere to be found. Um, Poor Nikki Haley's Southern charm isn't doing the trick as she continues to get blown away in primary after primary because of the radical Republican base doesn't even see her a career conservative as a Republican anymore. So what the hell is going to be the State of the Union and all of these characters come November 2024? Your guess is as good as mine, but let's give it a try. Now I get into sort of predicting again, 8 months ago. Joe Biden will not be the head of the Democratic ticket come November. Wow, came true. The DNC insiders will pull him aside, force him out, and hold a free-for-all pseudo-snap election to determine the head of the ticket. Not so true. Free-for-all snap election didn't really come to pass. You could argue that Kamala Harris sort of just asserted herself. There was not really an open process. Would have been nice if there was, but again, that was sort of Joe Biden's last fuck you to everybody on his way out. The candidate will be one of the following: Pete Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, or Josh Shapiro in that order of probability. Donald Trump will win the Republican primary, but will also be found guilty criminally of at least the hush money case. True, true. And although that is the least consequential of the cases he's embroiled in, polls have already indicated that a criminal conviction at least somewhat spoils his electability, and he will drop a few points in the polls as a result. It did temporarily, then eventually he bounced back, and people forgot about that. The Democrats stopped talking about it, and it kind of went away. If it is Joe Biden versus Donald Trump come November, even with a criminal conviction or two, Donald Trump will win and thrust the country into an even more disturbed and chaotic 4 years than the last time we tried that horrible experiment. This is obviously a prediction that's still on the table. We'll see how that goes over the next 4 years, but I stand by that. I think that will be true. Next, more Kamala Harris. If Kamala Harris is the nominee, I believe Donald Trump will also pull off the victory. So there you go. I was right about 8 months ago. I'll stick on this for a moment. And I said, due to her association with Joe Biden and her likability issue, the likability issue improved a little bit. The association with Biden potentially what ended up costing her at the end. Guys, she did a lot better than Joe Biden would have done. And we know now that the internal polling for Joe Biden said he was losing or looking like he was going to lose by about 400 electoral votes. Um, my my feelings were that Kamala Harris came out the gate very, very strongly. She had a number of progressive like policies on the table, and she picked Tim Walz. She sort of signaled a lot of positive things, and that she was sort of ready for the moment. She started sounding better in a couple of the interviews and public appearances she had, and there was a lot of momentum on her side. And then it just sort of imploded down the stretch. She associated herself with Cheney. She said that her presidency was going to be nothing different than Joe Biden's. She couldn't separate herself from Joe Biden. Joe Biden kind of never got out of the way fully, even torpedoing her campaign with the garbage statements at the end. So at the end of the day, this original prediction was the correct one. I should have stuck with that. But I had a little bit of hopeful, wishful thinking at the end there, and of course some late polling that really threw things off. Hope we maybe get into that next. I believe the strongest candidate, both in terms of chances to beat Trump or any Republicans, as well as lead the country powerfully forward for the next 4 years, is Josh Shapiro. I would prefer Bernie Sanders or someone like Nina Turner, but unfortunately, neither is realistic at this time. I don't know to what extent either of those are. Again, we didn't have an open primary, so we don't know what will or would have happened. But considering how the outcome of the race went, people absolutely desperate for a true, strong, hold no one, not holding back populist Bernie Sanders or Nina Turner. Nina Turner really more so fitting that category. If you're not familiar with Nina Turner, go ahead and look her up. Shapiro seems to be a decently strong candidate who sounds a lot like Barack Obama and doesn't seem too afraid to run a decently progressive campaign. Checks every box except that not everybody knew who he was. Governor of Pennsylvania. He actually won overwhelmingly in Pennsylvania. Think that would have made a difference having him at the top of the ticket? Yeah. Um, Whoever the Democratic candidate is, even if it's Joe Biden, they will outperform. Now, this is where my one prediction that sort of steadily got wrong. Um, Whichever the Democratic candidate is, even if it's Joe Biden, they will outperform the polls by 3 to 4 points nationally, as has been the trend ever since Roe versus Wade was overturned. For Joe Biden, this won't be enough to put him over Trump, but for almost any other Democrat, it would be. Then it seems like RFK is still planning to be on the ballot, but it's not certain how many states he's even going to be on, and it's also not certain which party he will sequester more votes away from. Keep an eye on those polls to see how that goes. Again, RFK dropped out, endorsed Trump, and now he's part of that team. Didn't really have that much of an effect, but yeah, maybe it did. The Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan actually were a little bit closer than people are making them out to be. So definitely a little bit there. And finally, I think we will survive, but I don't know. But I don't have all the confidence that this country will make the right choice due to recent history. A large part of the problem is Joe Biden and Democrats' stubbornness. Also, this two-party duopoly that essentially holds the country hostage and force feeds garbage down our throats is an epic shame and should have been done away with yesterday. Did I say more? The founding fathers intended that every election be open to numerous candidates of various parties, backgrounds, opinions. Nowadays, more people have the right to vote, only with fewer options to choose from. Go figure. These days, any competition from outside the big two is snuffed out viciously, except strangely for Trump, who flipped the script and viciously bulldozed his way into the Republican Party via hostile takeover. Regardless, those are topics for another day. Those are my thoughts on the state of the 2024 election. Let's see how badly this ages. So honestly, like fine wine in some ways. That one prediction I got pretty wrong was the shifts. My thoughts were that Roe versus Wade was going to be a real driving force in this election. To some extent, it probably was. This likely would have been much more of a blowout if that wasn't on the table and on the ticket. But even in the states that was on the ticket, it didn't really help at all. So who knows? At the end of the day, this was my final prediction. Again, we got that Iowa Seltzer poll that really skewed things. She was the most accurate pollster out of Iowa, and she had Harris +3, and so everyone kind of shifted their models. I was still a little hesitant to go crazy and start giving Harris states like Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Florida, Iowa, etc. I got a little bit overzealous with North Carolina. I had a map like this pretty much heading into election day a week before, and I shifted it. Probably should have stuck with it. I mean, obviously, it's hindsight at this point. Harris did not win any of the swing states, and the final map ended up looking like this. Pennsylvania, he won by like 150 to 200,000, Michigan about 80,000, then Wisconsin about 100, or sorry, about 10 or 20,000 votes. So again, the election came down really to those three states, couple 100,000 votes across those three states. And well, the story now that Trump is winning the popular vote and has a strong mandate for leadership. Project 2025 is on the table. And he's already making appointments and announcements regarding mass deportation plans, dismantling the Department of Education, sort of some Christian nationalism and freakish populist right things. There's also some anti-corruption stuff going on there, and he is sort of shotgun blasting out policy proposals, and it's a lot to sort of keep track of. We don't know which he's going to actually be serious about and where his attention is going to go. Of course, there are details about implementing all these things as they go. So it's exhausting, and we will do what we can with it. But that was sort of a retrospective, looking back on how I was viewing things going into it. Back a year or so ago, I knew Biden wasn't going to win. I had a feeling that not even Kamala was going to win. Who knows? Maybe even if we had Josh Shapiro or someone else, they wouldn't have won either. Would have probably been closer, it would have been closer. But you know, we've had the election and we are where we are. We've made our bed and now we got to sleep in it and we'll see what happens. So let me know what you guys think. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you listening. Drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.